Would the original author of The Wizard of Oz have liked the Wicked films? Well, first we'd have to ask if he would even recognize Wicked for Good as his Land of Oz. It's a sequel to a movie, based on a play, based on a book, based on a movie, based on a book. It's literally a 120-year game of telephone, with our modern notion of Oz shaped by pop culture relevancy. From the doors opening to brilliant Technicolor, to lines like,
"I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog too,"
or the simple image of the clicking of the ruby heels. Much of the 1939 film has been burned into our consciousness, but I don't think people really get how big and old this franchise really is. It spans over 18 live-action films, from 1908 all the way to 2025. Oz has stayed a permanent fixture of American cinema since its inception. It may be the oldest living franchise, with maybe only Sherlock Holmes in the running. It is in the past and present, a combination of our newest musical blockbuster and Baum's own early involvement in cinema, that we will find our answer.
That was totally wicked!
But before we can tackle this question of if L. Frank Baum would like Wicked, we first have to recognize it is an extension of the 1939 classic. After all, the book that the play was based on was clearly more inspired by the cinema version rather than Baum's original text. How do we know? Well, for one, the witch herself. If she had been based on the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, she would have been this short, fat woman with one eye, not the spitting image of Margaret Hamilton's version with her green skin, pointed black hat, and broomstick. There's quite a few changes within the 1939 classic, such as Glinda's expanded role where she functions as two different characters kind of merged together, the Good Witch of the North and the Good Witch of the South. So if the DNA of Wicked is much closer to the 1939 film, then we first need to bridge that gap. Would Baum have liked the classic? After all, he never lived to see it, as he died in the year of 1919. And I would say the definitive answer to this would be absolutely yes. Sure, there's changes in Victor Fleming's masterpiece, but for the most part, the film is a loyal adaptation that follows the sweeping beats of the original story. Most of the missing segments are within the epilogue that sees the group journey to find the Good Witch of the South, where the Scarecrow is crowned the ruler of Oz, the Tin Man the leader of the Winkies, and the Lion kills, a giant spider. But beyond scenes that are just cut for time, characters that are combined together, or just general aesthetic changes like the slippers changing from silver to ruby, which, by the way, was a decision to make them pop in Technicolor. Anyways, there is a general faithfulness here. But I think the real reason Baum would have embraced the 1939 classic is mostly due to one thing: theatrics. Baum was a man of the theater. It was his first love, one might even say. Before ever pursuing a career in writing, he first wanted to be an actor and playwright, and toured the country with his own stage company. There, he invented his own special effects and mechanical wizardry. And yes, that pun is 100% intended. Though he would give up on his acting dreams and open a shop in Aberdeen, South Dakota, he would never lose his love and passion for the theatrical arts. After the book, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, became a massive hit in the year 1900, Baum would produce his own stage musical based on the novel in 1902. It had significant changes from the original text, but showed off Baum's love for stage theatrics and music. So yes, I'd say one of the greatest films of all time that embraces the golden age of musicals would probably be warmly embraced by him. One could extend this to the new Wicked films as well. They were only made because the Broadway play became one of the biggest productions in the country, full of bright colors, tight dance choreography, sweeping musical numbers, and live-action special effects. It strikes to the very heart of what Baum loved in the theater. It was also with the 1902 musical that Baum learned the lesson of art through adversity. Now, a painting may be made by one man or woman, but a work of stage or film is the work of many hands. Which brings us to the next point. Baum has been dead for over 100 years. How would he take the changes to his original material or the dramatic perspective shift of Wicked? Well, when he first sent his draft of the 1902 musical out to producers, they rejected the playbook and handed it off to new writers for punch-ups. This was the first time Baum's world had been taken out of his hands and given to someone else. And man, did they take a hatchet to it, okay? The Wicked Witch of the West was entirely removed. Toto was turned into a cow. The Scarecrow and Tin Man were reinvented as this comedic duo, kinda in the vein of almost Abbott and Costello. And Dorothy was given this human sidekick, a waitress named Trixie from Tampico. Notably, the wizard is portrayed as this outright villain who usurps the throne of Oz from the rightful king. Now, the wizard as a villain? Who would ever try that? I don't know, maybe Jeff Goldblum in 100 years? Yet when the curtains closed, Baum then went up on stage and gushed about how much he loved it. He would liken it to a plum pudding, with many ingredients from many different creators. I'm also sure he probably really liked the money, as the play became a smash hit and made Baum the equivalent of $2 million in today's currency. But I think authentically, he did seem in awe at having his characters brought to life. Likewise, Wicked is taking many liberties, including all the ones carried over from the 1939 film. And the idea that the Wicked Witch is the hero of the story is just the least of it. You have this made-up Oz Hogwarts, a subplot of magic animals being driven out of Oz, and the idea that the wizard had an extramarital affair with the Wicked Witch's mother. Yeah, that definitely was not making it into a kid's book from 1900. In truth, Baum did not mind new creatives playing with his work. It happened when the producers took over his play, but it would happen again in 1910, when Otis Turner was forced to make a series of Oz films to complete contracts made by Baum before his bankruptcy. He would produce 4 movies, all without Baum's involvement, and to date, only one has survived. The first film, titled simply The Wonderful Wizard of Oz from 1910, a film stock full of major changes, such as the Scarecrow being an enchanted straw man from Kansas, not from Oz. He's already alive before they even get swept up by the tornado. Momba, a character from later books, appears as a villain who overthrows the wizard. Toto, again, gets transformed from a cute little puppy into a giant bulldog by the Good Witch. And Dorothy never makes it home by the end of the movie. Yet to date, the 1910 movie is the oldest surviving Wizard of Oz film that you can watch. But it's not even the first. Wicked makes a ton of changes. It is playing in this wide sandbox that Baum, I don't think, was ever really that overprotective of. In fact, I think he almost welcomed others coming in to take over some responsibility. He became an author stuck in a rut. Famously, there was this newspaper that wrote, and I am paraphrasing, "The only way Baum will stop Oz stories from being written is if he dies." And yeah, that even didn't work. We're still here with a movie likely to make $1 billion 100 years after his death. And that's a number that likely would have made Baum die just trying to calculate his royalties, okay? He would have just had a heart attack. Couldn't even imagine that much money. His real request for people taking over this world is that they remain true to the characters, themes, and the world. But most importantly of all, don't be boring. So did Wicked succeed in this? Well, for themes, it does pretty well. It embraces those core values of friendship, home being where their heart is, especially with that newly added song, No Place Like Home, and even obeys the core tenets of the Baum Oz books that no Oz story should end with kids being sent to bed, sad, or scared. Even if by doing so, they kind of undercut a story that may have been better served as a tragedy. And honestly, I think Baum even would have liked the animal rights angle, as he was a child of the 1850s, where there was this relationship with animals, horse-drawn carts, family cows, and goats. It was all a little bit more common and symbiotic back then, especially with animals being forced out of their roles as we go deeper into industrialization with moving cars and various machinery. But when it comes to the characters, there may be more of a debate to be had. The 2 main protagonists of Glinda and Elphaba are so far removed from anything Baum ever wrote. Elphaba is, of course, reinterpreted as an anti-hero, and Glinda is a merging of multiple characters, and now transfused with a little bit of Rachel McAdams from Mean Girls.
Gretchen, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen.
Let's tackle them one at a time. I think Baum would have really liked the character of Elphaba. First, because I think Baum did want to believe in the innate good of people, and creating a character that's outright evil and irredeemable may not have sat right with him. You can see this with the wizard. After all, in his original story, the wizard was not shown quite so sympathetic or kindly, especially not as much as he was in the movie version. He was inspired by the Cardiff Giant hoax by P.T. Barnum, when the famed stage man created a petrified giant and pretended that he dug it up in the desert, only then to have this big reveal that it was an act of showmanship and to highlight just public gullibility. This is the man who was credited as saying, "There's a sucker born every minute." Now, people don't know if he actually said that for sure, but, that sounds about accurate when it comes to this story. The wizard, too, is a con man, a pitiful humbug who lies, cheats, doesn't fulfill any of his promises, and is promptly banished. It's only in the 4th book, Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, where his rougher edges are sanded down. The wizard himself in Wicked is not actually too far off from the original interpretation.
You have no real power.
Exactly.
Likewise, taking the witch and making her softer and more sympathetic would, in spirit, be kind of a similar choice to what he actually did with his wizard back in the 1900s, creating more depth to him. It's with the classic 1939 film that the Wicked Witch became one of the most iconic villains of all of cinema. What was originally a side quest B villain in the novel is expanded to a full antagonist. It's there from the very inciting incident of a house flattening her sister and a snot-nosed girl from Kansas stealing her shoes. Come to think of it, when you put it that way, the Wicked Witch, it does seem like she had pretty good motivation for doing what she did. Especially after Dorothy is literally hired by a con-man dictator to assassinate the Wicked Witch in her own home. Okay, that's bad. That's not great.
Bring me the broomstick of the Witch of the West.
But if we do that, we'll have to kill her to get it.
You can see why she'd be a little irked. And that is exactly how the idea for Wicked was born. What if the Wicked Witch was a good guy all along? It's because of that original inspiration for the wizard that leap doesn't actually feel that big of one. It's still in line with the original concept for the character. Secondly, I think Baum likes the idea of peeling back layers and seeing what is beneath. One could say, what's behind the curtain? A truth beyond just the surface level. There are strong parallels between Elphaba and Baum's own life. No, really, just kind of slow down that name a little bit, okay? Frank Baum. Elphaba. See, it fits together, comes back around in circles. Baum was sent to military school at a young age, where he found he did not really like the rigidity of formal education, and he was actually kind of a poor student. He was also left-handed, and back then, that was actually punishable. Rewinding the clock, back in the 1800s, left-handedness, it wasn't just seen as, awkward and leaving smudges when you write with ink pens. It was seen as being just backwards. Left-handed kids would have their left hands tied behind them and knuckles wrapped with canes in order to retrain them to write properly. I think Baum actually would have found parallels with Elphaba's experience in school, not in the obvious racial metaphors regarding skin color, but rather in her rebellious spirit, her contempt for the academy and authority figures, and how she was singled out for physical realities outside her own control. Now, as for Glinda, I think he first would have been confused how this character transformed into what she is now. But I'm not entirely sure he would exactly hate it. His stepmother, Matilda Joslyn Gage, was a founder of the female suffrage movement. There is a reason he made his main character Dorothy, a strong-willed young girl. Glinda's movement from a socially conforming sycophant to independent woman who challenges authority would very much have sat right with him. As for the other characters, the lion is basically his exact book counterpart, okay? He's cowardly. That's all he needs to be. And even the Scarecrow, secretly being this prince, probably would have worked for him as a lover of classic Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales. And it does tie into his rise as the new ruler of Oz at the end of the first book. But there is one big sticking point here, and that would be the Tin Man. Gone is the kind, metal-hearted man of the original, and he's been replaced with kind of this bloodthirsty, bitter killer. Now, I get they were going for literally a man who lost his heart, and he's now become cruel. But the point of the three companions is they actually embodied all the qualities they were seeking. And while that still works for the Lion and Scarecrow, the Tin Man here, he's a complete bastardization of his source. His portrayal, I can guarantee you, would not have sat right with Baum. Yet for the most part, Wicked captures the brilliance of the world. Most of the characters are approximations of the source. And those that aren't, and they've been shifted, they're still interesting reinterpretations in line with old themes and Baum's own values. But let's move on to technology. Would Baum become like the stories of those people watching Train Arriving at the Station, where supposedly they ran screaming in terror when they saw the first film of a train coming at them? That didn't happen, by the way, okay? That was very much an embellished story. In fact, there's even a parody of that story from all the way back in the silent era. Even then, they knew it was complete BS. Baum had no fear, I think, from film. He was entranced with the magic of stage and film. His main inspiration for moving into film was the legendary father of special effects, George Méliès. Before Méliès came along, the Lumiere brothers believed that film should capture reality as it was. But Méliès was a magician himself and used his illusionary skills combined with new filmmaking technology to create illusions on screen, most famously in A Trip to the Moon. Baum saw his films and instantly saw the potential to truly capture Oz in a way that could never be done on stage. He would first partner with the Radio Plays Company and self-produce a traveling cinema show called the Fairy Log Radio Plays. These were a collection of fairy tale shorts, but many included Baum's own Oz stories. Among them was a movie where the characters from Oz jumped out of a black and white book into a fully hand-tinted, colorized world. Sound a little familiar? The Fairy Log radio plays were also notable for being the first surviving record of a movie with a score, with 20 musical numbers played by a full orchestra, as the last remnant of the merging of the arts, music and motion picture. This was a tradition carried into one of the most well-known musicals of all time with the 1939 classic, and now with one of the most famous musicals of our modern age. Make no mistake, Baum had a love for music. He wrote his own music numbers for various productions, including his original play. It's when he saw the music and his world come together that he sort of had that enter into his books. He started to intentionally write scenes into the novels that he could envision as being played by an army of scantily clad stage girls, okay, in big sweeping music numbers. To see sound and music combined seamlessly in film as it is today, it would have made goosebumps rise on his arms. To see the unfathomable special effects that the modern day could produce, that wouldn't have shocked or frightened him, but instead tickled his curiosity. As a man who left his own mark on the history of cinema, he would have been struck in wonder at how far it's come along. Yet story is still always king. It's kind of important. Quality. Baum was a lover of cinema, theater, music, and everything that makes, the modern audience seek out the Wicked films. But are the Wicked films actually any good? When I first heard the play was going to be split into 2 parts, I was actually dreading it. I was having flashbacks to the Hobbit trilogy. I figured they would feel padded out and endless filler. Then the first film came out and knocked my socks off. I actually put it into my top 5 films of the year. It had vibrant imagery, 2 beautiful voices, and a story about nonconformity and finding your own path. That all struck pretty hard, especially with a climax that sends you out on one hell of a music number. Director John Chu is perhaps one of the best music directors of today, between this and In the Heights. He has this eye for merging story, high emotional beat music, and combining flawless dance choreography with killer cinematography. It became, perhaps, my favorite Oz film behind the original. And I have seen them all, by the way, so let me know if you want to see a video on all the Oz films, okay? I could do it. It'd be long. Again, over 18 movies, but we could do it.
So just do it! Make your dreams come true! Do it!
But then the sequel, Wicked for Good, came along, and it's kinda everything I feared when I heard it was getting split into 2. Lots of extra new songs that don't pack the same punch, added scenes and plot lines. Now, I'm not gonna say the movie is bad, but it is a massive step down from the first. I don't think I can say it has been changed for the better. There's a lot of good parts in the whole, but it has been stretched like taffy to the point where it really starts to thin out, especially when it comes to narrative cohesion and pacing. And don't get me wrong, there are ways they could have expanded this into a full runtime and improved on the original source material, and certainly for that second half. It's common knowledge, even amongst the most diehard Wicked fans, that the first half of the play is significantly better than the second half. And this really does hold true with this adaptation as well. John Chu claimed that they wanted to faithfully adapt the play to screen, and I kinda wish they hadn't, at least not with the second half. The first half, yeah, it fits together brilliantly for the screen, but here they could have taken the opportunity to bring the second half up to the quality of the first, and it wouldn't have even been that hard. The first film brilliantly covers the witch's origin and why she decides to become the Wicked Witch of the East. The second film is more the witch's POV of the original film, and I wish they had really committed to this more. If I could name one change that could have been made to this film to make it instantly better, I could sum it up in just one word: Dorothy. Actually cast a Dorothy, make her a significant supporting character, and show her scenes in full with the witch. Really get into their relationship through a new lens. These should have been the new scenes. Instead, the film keeps Dorothy faceless and hidden off screen. It relies on the audience's knowledge of the 1939 film to fill in all the blanks. In doing so, they cut the knees out from under what could have been some of the most emotional moments of the movie, as we see Elphaba irrationally blame this child in her grief, and start to spiral down to become the person the Wizard of Oz claims her to be, all before she then sacrifices herself and allows Dorothy to melt her. Instead, this is leaving everything up to our imagination. What could be the strongest emotional moments of the movie feel like scenes that got lost along the way, leaving empty holes that wreck the pacing and do a disservice to the character arc of our lead. So what do we get instead? Well, a series of extended love triangles. Love square, I guess, actually. They're It's 4 people fighting over each other. And all of this takes up far too much time and distracts from the more pressing issues of Oz, and kind of makes our characters look a little bit more petty. Honestly, I thought at one point the Scarecrow was going to get amnesia when he transformed, literally losing his brain. See how that works? But instead, I'm left wondering, why, when journeying with Dorothy, did he not just say, hey, the Wicked Witch is actually my girlfriend, and she's not too bad. The wizard's actually the sketchy one, and if we just go to Elphaba and give her back her sister's shoes, she could probably even get you home. Also, why does he not seem to recognize the Tin Man too, and go, hey, this was actually my buddy in college? So, yeah, there's a lot of holes that are created from that. I just don't believe that character would actually go on the journey and it would progress how it did with the knowledge he has. Usually amnesia is seen as this kind of nasty crutch that films use to get out of things, but in this case, it actually would have fit thematically and it would have solved most of the problems. Now, I'm not trying to sound like too much of a Debbie Downer here. I think this second entry is perfectly fine. It has amazing acting, singing, and heartfelt moments that don't undercut Baum's original version, but instead take a bite at it from a new angle. It has this emotionally satisfying conclusion, yet it's still a shadow of the first film. But there is a silver lining. Just like how Maple Films came in and re-edited The Hobbit out into a single film, I fully expect a fan will come along, cut all the fat out of this second half, and edit it together with the first film into a perfect 4-hour epic. I guarantee it. In the end, Wicked does give us exactly what it was in stage form, often for the better and occasionally for the worse. It's just amazing to me that media of today can still find relevance in Baum's original characters and world. Like Baum said, it's like a plum pudding. In its evolution from book to play to film, it becomes kind of a celebration of all this media combined. With that in mind, there's still one big elephant in the room, and you probably thought I was happy to ignore it. Look at this date here, okay? This is the date that Frank Baum was born. Now look at this date over here. This was the date of the American Civil War. Do you see the problem? Now, L. Frank Baum was, like almost everyone of the 1850s, a racist. With the age of industrialization, travel across the globe was getting easier than ever. Cultures were meeting, the great American cocktail was mixing, and there was clashing of various cultures. It was in every form, from petty squabbles between street vendors to literal widespread slavery. Now, Baum's prejudices were less directed at the African Americans and more hostile towards natives. He even, very unfortunately, wrote and published a piece on how all the Native Americans on the continent should either be run out or killed. Yeah, ouch, okay? It's a viewpoint completely at odds with his world of Oz, of wild, weird characters finding acceptance. Now, I want to give you another date, okay? This is the date of the Dakota War of 1862, also known as the Sioux Uprising. This war lasted 5 weeks and ended with the death of hundreds of settlers and natives, and also one of the largest mass executions in U.S. history. It's important to remember, Baum grew up in a time of heightened tensions with Native Americans, where small towns like Aberdeen feared another Native uprising with mass hysteria of the spreading ghost dances, all played up by newspapers as a potential new frontier war. And this is not an excuse for calls to genocide, but just an explanation of the mindset of the time. And he was more mildly racist, I guess, if you want to put it that way, towards other ethnicities in his other books, most of these targeted more towards an adult audience. Again, in this time period, you'll be hard-pressed to find someone who wasn't racist. The point here is not to put Baum under a microscope of modern-day moral privilege, but instead simply to point out that a black actress likely would not have sat right with him for a man of his time. If he saw a white actor and black actress kiss, or even share a bed like they do in the movie, I think he would have probably had a heart attack or died instantly from a brain aneurysm. So if we're being completely honest, that may be the deal breaker here. But we don't actually know. Like I said, if I took Baum and put him in a teleporter and transported him to the modern day and gave him maybe a year or so to acclimate to the racial climate, who knows, alright? This is all hypothetical anyways. Again, his animosity seemed more saved for US tribal communities than it was African Americans. But we can't really know for sure. So let's say for pure argument, let's just strip the high racial tension entirely out of the equation and base this purely on the look of the movie, the narrative, characters, and the technical perspective. Would L. Frank Baum have liked this adaptation? In my opinion, I do think this duology would have done him proud. Baum had a love for stage, a love for cinema, and a love for seeing his characters brought to life. He loved it so much that he actually faced bankruptcy twice just trying to bring it to screen. Baum was so dedicated to the idea of bringing his characters to screen that he ended up making his own film production company, called, quite simply and maybe uncreatively, the Oz Film Manufacturing Company. I actually did a full video on this, you're welcome to check it out. But in this company, he would produce 3 full feature films. He would do The Patchwork Girl of Oz, The Magic Cloak of Oz, and His Majesty the Scarecrow of Oz, all feature films. The only issue is, Baum had some difficulty actually finding distribution for these movies. As a result, they were kind of lower budget, and they also completely flopped. A lot of distributors just didn't think there was a market for children's movies, at least not on the big screen, that they wouldn't have the attention span for it. Actually getting the movie out to people was nearly impossible. So then Baum tried to pivot the company into more adult entertainment with adaptations of his more adult novels like The Last Egyptian. This saw no more success. So his whole idea of creating almost this pre-Disney children's empire with his own Oz books as a launchpad never truly came to pass. But I don't think that means he ever let go of the dream of it. I think he would have welcomed seeing another side of the curtain for the witch. I think he would have accepted having her edges softened and a new perspective shown. The rest of the movie retains the DNA of his world and characters enough that they are still recognizable. It supports his themes of friendship and home, and embraces his respect for women in positions of power and self-determination. He would have been at awe with the music numbers and stunned by the modern visuals and effects wizardry. More than anything though, I have to imagine that he would have felt extremely just teary-eyed at the notion that after 120 years, people are still packing the theaters and coming back to the world he created. That alone makes me think L. Frank Baum would indeed have liked Wicked and Wicked for Good. But what do you think? From what we now know about this legendary children's author, would he have embraced this version of the story? Let me know in the comment sections down below. If you can't tell, I'm a little sick for this one. I'm fighting my way through it, but we're getting there. I'm going to be back again next month with all new videos for you, including my Who Killed the Pirates of the Caribbean. Be sure to subscribe for that. Thanks, and see you then. Keep those reels turning.